Hello, it's me, Ernest. Today we will be installing the Extreme Bypass oil filter on this lovely 2014 Toyota Tundra. And doing so from the great state of Hawaii. This Tundra has the 5.7 liter I-Force engine, 381 horses in case you were wondering. Anyway, you may notice that they do not have the Tundra specific kit on the website, so I got one for the 4Runner. Whatever reason, the kit did not come with the exact same fittings pictured in the kit images. Mostly important was the brass T-fitting not included. No problem, ran a quick trip to Napa and got one for a few bucks. I also grabbed an adapter fitting for one odd fitting in the kit. First up is some bench work. Thread the 1/8 inch NPT fitting into the oil filler cap with the return port and tighten. There are special tools for these fittings to avoid marring these lovely frameable anodized fittings. But if you aren't afraid of scratching them, standard wrenches will work. Next up are the canister fittings. These are 2 ports for the fittings and 2 threaded mounted holes that we will not use. As you can see, I always use Teflon tape on the threads. You can start it with your fingers and then later winch them tight with a wrench. I use the supplied installation bracket to help brace the canister to keep it from spinning away under the torque of tightening. When you're all done, it looks like this. And temporarily remove the bracket from the can. As you can see, these fittings swivel nicely after tightening to ease installation later. Now we're going to install the bracket normally, but leave the bolt slightly loose for now. The next step is to find our mounting location. I've chosen behind the grill where there is an open spot and short runs to both the pressure port and the oil filter housing and the return port at the oil filler cap. This is an aftermarket grill that removes easily with a few screws and 2 clips, then pulls out of the snap fittings like so. Oops, I have to temporarily cut the wires for the aftermarket red LED grill lighting. Gotta have it. There we go. Again, lots of space here from left to right, but I choose the driver's side. Here we will briefly set the assembly where we want to mount it and mark the holes to drill. Looks like a 3/8 bit for the 3/8 inch bolts will work just fine. Let's do some damage. Yep, I'm liking that location for convenience and effectiveness. Time to mount that sucker. These big trucks where there's plenty of room to work with these things. A nice easy access and visibility to get the nuts on and go ahead and tighten those up. After having removed the bracket for ease of mounting, I then reinstall the canister after tightening the mounting bolts, and I put a cloth in this lovely can to keep it from being scratched on the bumper. Next, we are going to remove the skid plate to access the oil sending unit, where we will be able to enable our pressure feed to the canister by installing the brass T. You'll need a 10mm for the front screws, or cheat with a drill like I did, and 12mm with extension to remove deep bolts from side, front, and one back middle. Slide the skid plate to the driver's side and remove. And set it out of the way. Alright, here is the oil sending unit. Unplug carefully and then use a 14mm or 9/16 wrench to loosen. Then, at that point where you can remove it by hand, you can do so if desired. Either right before or after this installation, you'll want a fresh oil change. I won't do that on this video, but in the short, here's the filter cartridge housing, and back there on the passenger side of the oil pan, you can find the drain plug. That way you start out with some nice clean oil. You can see the oil sending unit will fit into one of the ports on the brass T fitting, but we will install the T first into the port that the oil sending unit came out from. Install the brass T fitting and tighten carefully with a 9/16 wrench. You do not want to break it off. Then reinstall the oil sending unit, verify plug still reaches, and install the additional adapter I mentioned earlier. This gives clearing for the pressure line that we will install next. So after putting this fitting on, we're going to remove the threaded nut from the fitting to install the hose onto the fitting nut. The kit came with 8 feet and I used about 4 feet for each side, in and out. That means 1 cut to create 2 hoses. Wrap electrician's tape around the cut area to contain the braids from becoming loose while in unwinding. I use side cutters. Then push and twist the end of the hose into the nut until the hose bottoms out on the ridge inside the nut. You can use oil around the inside of the fitting nut to ease the difficult process. Now here comes the fun part. We're going to screw the hose with the nut onto the fitting, starting by hand and finishing with 2 wrenches. You're going to need strong hands. Repeat this process for the fitting that goes to the in line on the canister. The line from the pressure port is routed up behind the bumper and must be connected to the in-port fitting on the canister to operate correctly, so make sure you get that right. Now for the return line from the canister. Again, connect the fitting for the canister to the second hose and lubing the nut, here with oil again. And here I started using a ratchet instead of my hands to twist or rotate the fitting nut onto the hose. After that, tighten again with wrenches, and this hose gets attached to the out port on the filter base. Very important here, verify all fittings are tight. And now here from the canister, I routed the hose through the holes in the front, around the battery, and to the return area. Be sure when routing this hose to avoid sharp edges and corners as well as hot and vibrating surfaces. And do that with all of your hose routing, of course. The hose is installed onto the ported oil filler cap, which replaces your stock oil cap. So now just a comprehensive look at our routing here. The pressure line I secured by drilling a hole in each of the 2 plastic tabs at the bottom of the radiator fan guard. Zip tied them and then up to the canister from here. From there, from the canister, the out or return line goes up through gaps in the front, around the battery, and to the return cap. Notice I put in some service loops or extra curved line between body and engine to allow for movement. Now, if you need to loosen the cap, it might already be loosened, so you want to verify it's going to be tight. But here's your chance to orient the wording in the direction you like, and then snug that down till the bolt kind of bottoms out. Don't overdo it, but do get it snug. Oh man, is that looking good. Now with the oil changed, you are ready for testing. Fire up the engine for a few seconds, then check for leaks. If nothing is squirting out, that's a good sign. Run the engine for another 5 to 10 minutes and recheck for leaks visually and by carefully running a finger under the joints. It may be hot, you can use gloves, but you want obviously dry finger. Oh, that's looking so good. Since the Extreme Bypass oil filter can add up to 1 quart of oil capacity, check the oil again and top off if needed now that it's been running. It will also act as an oil cooler. How cool is that? You feel confident that everything's tight and there's no leaks at this point. With the installation, you can button up the grill and reinstall the skid plate. Time for a real test drive where you can get the engine up to speed and run to hot for one final check afterwards. You can verify oil is running through the filter canister because it will warm up, or pull the Extreme oil filler cap off to see if oil is being returned through it. Engine off, you should see oil in the return port. If you are daring, you can pull the oil cap off to see the oil stream returning when the engine is idling, but be prepared to clean up a mess. In any case, you can be assured you will always have the cleanest, silkiest oil running through your engine as you drive. Of course, you can mount the filter anywhere you like, down on the frame or under the hood, but you may need longer hoses. Plus, I think it looks super cool in the grill. What do you think? That's just me. Happy cruising. The real deal.